Hello, and welcome to The Prodigal Life. I'm Deacon Harold, and joined as usual by Ellen and Nick. And we are here to bring you to a deeper intimacy with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and the Catholic faith.
Yes.
What are we going to talk about specifically today?
Specifically today, Nick, we are going to talk about Catholic family life.
Okay.
And basically what your faith walk looked like in your family if you were raised a cradle Catholic, or even if you were converted to the Catholic faith, and how it changed your family dynamic, if you know of anybody like that. I think all of us are cradle Catholics, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to speak more to the cradle Catholics. And then, anything that goes along with, raising children that way, what it looks like now. If your children are older, what is their, what have they done? Is there any things you kind of maybe wish that you'd done more of or less of in their Catholic upbringing? And how, sometimes it can work in reverse. Like your kids will actually teach you things, which is kind of an interesting shindiggy too. So, yeah, we're going to talk about the Catholic family life. You want to share about yours and what your family, what it was like growing up with your family and how it is raising your family and all that stuff.
Okay. Well, so I was brought up in a Catholic home, and we were a pretty Catholic family, Mass every Sunday and holy days of obligation. We would go to confession as a family, and adoration even as a family. Despite that, I was still young, but I didn't have a deep appreciation for why we were doing these things. It was usually afterwards, can we get ice cream? Then after fourth grade, my parents got a divorce, and then I was brought up in two different versions of Catholicism, because they both really still loved being Catholic. They just had very differing approaches to what that meant in terms of teachings along the lines of faith and morals more so. So, that became pretty confusing, and eventually, I don't want to necessarily blame this on the divorce as a catalyst, but eventually I became, in my early adulthood, an agnostic atheist, somewhere in between there. And by the grace of God, I'm back home, in the Catholic Church, and I love it, and it's stuck. I'm here to stay, With my own kids and my wife, we love praying the Rosary together. When I go on a date, when I take my daughters on a date, one by one, we try to every time include a spiritual component to that, and so we'll step into the church together and pray together in front of the tabernacle, and they always treasure that. They always recall that as a fond thing. So that's been really cool, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey for me to try to raise them in ways that I'm conscientious of. How do I help them have a better shot at this than I had?
Right.
And I think every parent does that a little bit, but regardless of whether it's about faith or life in general. But for me, it's definitely about, to me, they're intertwined, the faith and life in general, you can't separate them in my mind. And so it's been an interesting thing. Now I still don't feel, I still don't feel like a grown up. I feel like I'm in high school still, and I don't know who let me have 4 kids, and
All right.
it's weird, but yeah.
Yeah, that's neat. What about you, Deacon?
Yeah, so my mom was the first Catholic in our family. She was Methodist and became Catholic as a teenager. Yeah. And so my father was not a person of faith, so all 4 of us kids, and me particularly, were the first baptized Catholic, because I'm the oldest. So I was the first baptized Catholic in our family. And my mom raised us as Catholic. She had a very simple faith, but she more witnessed to the faith than taught. Okay. And it was awesome. And like I said, I am where I am now because of my mom and her perseverance in the faith and her dedication to send us to Catholic schools. That was very important to her, that we have a Catholic education, and she sacrificed a lot to make that happen. And so I'm a child of divorce as well. And so all 4 of us were affected by that. Me, I was almost afraid to get married, so I didn't want to end up like my parents, but fortunately I was able to overcome that fear. And so my initial thing with raising kids was do everything the opposite of what my dad did. Sure. So I figured, that's the default position. Because I thought I was going to be a monk and a priest. I never thought I'd actually be married. But now that I am married and having kids, okay, just do everything the opposite. Then I realized that's not enough. So we sent our kids to Catholic school, just like my mom did for us, and I realized that's not enough, So I really had to just by my witness and example, So same thing. I took my girls out on dates. Their first dates are with me. And because you see those stupid Gillette commercials on television, the best a man can get. I mean, come on. I mean, they start the bar down here. You know what the bar is? Don't hit her.
Right.
Don't call her names. The bar should start here, recognizing the dignity of the woman in the eyes of God. I mean, that's where the bar starts.
Exactly.
Then it moves up from there.
Right.
You see, that's the example I'm trying to set for my girls, because, at some point, some guy's going to come to my house and want to take them out on a date, right, when they're 30, and but whatever I say to her is going to go in one ear and out the other, because she's focused on that guy.
Right.
But what she's going to take out the door with her that night is the same thing she's going to take down the aisle with her one day, right? She's going to have 18 years, 19 years of watching how I treat my wife, right? So the greatest gift I can ever give to my wife is what Paul says in Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And how did he show his love for the church? He died for her. So to give my life every day, to die to myself, to live for my wife and kids, that's the best gift I can ever give my kids. And then my son, I take him on guys' night out. I didn't know what to do with my son. My father didn't do much with us except take us to kung fu movies, which was cool, but that was cool. I mean, those back then with double features.
At least you have a memory. At least you have a good memory.
Yeah, they had the double features back then, and two movies, we get like a little meal in between and stuff, and that was cool. So I just took them on guys' night out. We eat wings and bacon cheese fries and talk about life and talk about stuff, and then go see Thor: The Avengers, right? Because we're men.
Oh,
Black Panther, we still do that, actually.
That's nice.
My son, he's 19 now. We still do that, which is awesome.
That's really cool.
And I love to
cool.
spend that time with him. He looks forward to it.
That's
cool. Because I wanted him to be able to talk about difficult things with his dad. Not learn from a rock star, an athlete, or an
Some
actor.
TikTok video
something.
telling him what to do.
Right, exactly. I wanted him to be able to be comfortable coming to his dad to talk about things.
That's beautiful. How about you, Ellen?
Yeah, I grew up in, like I said, my dad was a convert. He was a Congregationalist, and he converted to the faith after he married my mom. My mom was raised Catholic, and she was like old school Catholic raised, but she was another one that she lived the faith, with her actions and her work ethic and everything that she did. And she was very involved with, helping others and charities and nonprofits and PTAs and, neighborhood associations. And so she was pretty selfless and always giving. And she sacrificed too, to make sure that my brother and I, had all the things that we needed to have and had the best of things we could do. She also was hard too. But that was good. Sometimes you need hard. But we, like I said, we always went to church on Sundays. That was a fairly regular thing. My brother was an altar server. I never did. I taught CCD when I was a senior in high school. I taught actually kindergartners. And I will tell you, that was probably one of the most rewarding experiences of my high school years. Because for 5 months, so after Christmas or whatever, I had a group of 5 and 6 year olds and trying to teach them about Jesus and God. And then, but, I honestly think that I learned a lot more from them too, because, from the mouths of babes, they just had this beautiful purity and innocence about them. So that was really fun. And then, you get married and you go off, and we went to church in the beginning of our marriage, and then something shifted and, things started, and then there really wasn't a whole lot of church except when we went home. Whenever we were home, we would go back to our family churches because they were in the hometown, and that was just what you would do. We went to church a little bit in Hawaii and California. My ex, he was a Marine. He served in the Marine Corps for over 20 years. So, and we did a lot of that. Then I, had my kids, and we never thought we'd have children. We had a lot of miscarriages in the beginning. We had 4 miscarriages.
Wow.
They had me misdiagnosed as an Rh positive, and I'm a horrible Rh negative. So they didn't know that I needed RhoGAM. So I, had 4 miscarriages, which was rough. And so we never thought we'd have children. And then all of a sudden there was Corinne. You know what I mean? I got pregnant, and that was kind of amazing too. And so we went back to church for a little while, but the kids went to Catholic school. They all were, baptized, penance, confirmed. They all did their confirmations. The last one was in 2016. And my son is now, 29, and he wants to get married in the church. So he did the marriage prep with the church, and he's his wife is Armenian, so she is in the Gregorian, the oldest Orthodox church, whatever that is. So they're going to actually go to Armenia and get married in her church as well, which is really neat, hopefully this summer. And then they're going to come back and get married in the Catholic church at the church. He'll be the 5th generation to get married in our family's church up in Massachusetts, so which is really cool. So he's like sorting it out and kind of seeking a little bit, I think. My other 2 daughters are not really they're just out. I pray. You know what I mean? You have to be like St. Monica. You just have to believe and keep praying, and you have to live your life so that example. And unfortunately, when they were younger, I was not living a life that was representational of any Catholic teachings that I can think of off the top of my head. And I have great regret, because I know I never taught them to say the rosary. But we did go to Mass. They did go to Catholic school, and we did get into Mass. So they have something. And luckily their grandparents, my mother would take them in the summer times, and they'd go live with their cousins and stuff like that. And my mother was always full of history and teaching. And actually my parents were my middle child's godparents, which is pretty good. And then my brother is my son's godfather. And so we tried to do a lot of, family things. So, which is really neat. And actually, my niece, my ex-husband, that's her godfather. So
nice.
yeah. So we tried to keep it to where the family was still involved in it, but it wasn't, there wasn't, rosary, and we didn't go in the bed. I didn't go in and teach my kids to say the Our Father like my dad went and taught me that. And looking back, those are regrets that you can have, but the journey is different for everybody.
Yeah, and we actually didn't teach our kids initially, at least, some of the scripted prayers like that. We started. In fact, they didn't even learn the "Bless Us, O Lord" prayer before meals until half a year ago. So what we did is we took the approach of reversing what had happened to me, where I was taught all of the right stuff, but I didn't have the context. We took the approach of trying to provide them with context first. So we did teach them praying before meals and praying before bed, but to start out, we were just talking to God, right? So that they would understand that's what we're doing when we're doing this.
Okay.
And so,
that's smart.
yeah,
That's very smart.
so we would start by just verbalizing, and when they were, at a reasonable age, they would take a turn to lead the prayer before a meal, Lord, thank you so much for this food. My son, Augustine, who's 4 years old, he is so cute when he does it. He says, everything is beautiful. So he says, Lord, thank you for this beautiful food and this beautiful family and this beautiful day and this beautiful house. He does that every single time. And I love it. And so that's kind of where we started. And now they're learning, the more routine, scripted stuff.
Nice.
But it has the context, the foundation of the relationship and the communication. It's
That's
not just
important.
reading off this stuff. Yeah.
Did you guys have regular family prayers and time and stuff like that with your kids when they were growing up?
Yeah, so and we did some unique things with that too. Like I mentioned last episode about how we taught them how to pray the rosary, right? And then what we do on Wednesday or Thursday night at dinner, I would read the gospel for the Sunday Mass. So we just have a conversation,
smart.
not any exegesis. Well, this is what this word means in Greek. It was just read the gospel. Hey, what's Jesus doing? What's going on here? What's going? And
That's
just have a
great
conversation
idea.
about it, because what that did was we went to Mass. They're paying attention now, especially the homily. Ooh, I wonder if Father's going to talk about what we talked about. They're already more connected into what's going on at the Mass.
Then they may
really
actually
cool.
understand what the priest is saying.
Well, yeah,
More, you know what I mean? 'Cause a lot
sometimes
of
it backfires. Sometimes the homily sucked. It's like, whoa, okay. Because they're used to hearing good preaching,
Right.
And then all of a sudden, if I'm not there, I'm traveling, and they come back and say, "How was Mass?" Oh man, he just talked about himself. They're listening. What that tells you
that's
that they're
good.
listening. Yeah, no, it is good. It is good.
Wow.
And they're listening for content. But now, when they're older, sometimes parents beat themselves up because the kids aren't practicing the faith. But you do the best that you can, and then they still have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Right.
You've given them the foundation. You've done now that, but now they have to make the decision whether they're going to continue to to follow the lead that you set for them.
And and you have to trust the Holy Spirit too. That you know what I mean. If you keep praying and keep planting the seeds, because you can even if they're away, you can still do small things. You know what I mean? Like St. Therese says, little things. You can do little things that will keep planting seeds, because you never know what that seed's going to sprout. Because St. Monica and St. Augustine are like the perfect examples. That took 30 years, right?
Yeah.
It was 30 years that he was off just doing his debauchery. And then all of a sudden
making a name for himself.
Oh, yeah, he had quite a name. Yes, he did. But she never gave up.
Yep.
She never gave up, and she prayed for 30 years, and then all of a sudden, there it was, and she actually got to see him, be taken into full communion with the Catholic Church before she died, and that's just what a gift.
Yeah.
What a gift. So
there's a movie actually about his stories called Restless Hearts. It's so good.
Really?
Oh yeah.
We'll have to put a link up to that. We'll put a link up to that. That'll be good.
It's not a short one, but
that's okay.
yeah, it's really good.
Restless Hearts.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
No.
Oh, I've never even heard of it.
Beautiful.
That is really, really good.
And they did a good. I mean, he had in his debauchery, in his heyday, when he was a party animal, they did a good job portraying that. For being a religious film, I was pretty impressed by how where they took that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. That's
Crazy.
awesome. I think one of the issues that need to be addressed in family life today is the fact that so many parents are outsourcing their responsibility of teaching their children the faith.
Yes.
So for example, they'll spend all kinds of money with travel soccer team, with travel football team, with travel volleyball team, whatever, driving all over creation, multiple states, thousands of dollars, so their kid can play on a team, but they won't even put nearly half the effort in when it comes to the catechesis of their own children. So they outsource it. Oh, youth group will do it, confirmation class will do it, Catholic schools will do it, Father will do it. And those things are good, but they're there to support, not take the place of what's supposed to be going on at home.
That's exactly right.
And so our job as parents is to lay a foundation in the lives of the children. Our job is not to build the house of their lives with and for our children. That's God's job, right? Psalm 127, which is first of all, it's one of the gradual psalms, but it's also one of two psalms written by Solomon. The other one's 72. If the Lord does not build the house, in vain do the builders labor. So the Lord has to build a house of the children's lives with them. Our job is to lay a foundation upon which that house will stand strong and firm.
Yes.
Nice.
That's excellent.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's really, really important. And I think, we live in, what's the divorce rate? Is it like 52%?
It's over 50,
Yeah.
I think it's like 52%. So you've got
and it's higher if you cohabitated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got mothers and fathers, probably working 2 and 3 jobs, trying to get, trying to figure it out. But like you said, they can always get them to soccer or band or Boy Scouts or this or that, whatever. But, taking the time to try and, teach them the importance of their eternal life. It's kind of like a priority thing. You know what I mean? It's just trying to prioritize what's really important. And I think that maybe that's something that needs to be looked at, within the church a little bit.
Here's the problem. See, what happens is they go to school and they learn stuff about Jesus, right? That's head knowledge. Then they come home and they're supposed to see the faith that they're learning being lived out, the heart knowledge. That's why the John Paul II called the family the domestic church, the church of the home. So it's the head and the heart, and you make that connection, and that connection brings them into intimacy with the Lord. Yeah. But if you don't do that, then what happens is they come home, they say, well, if the faith's not important to my parents, it's not important to me. And so what they learn at school becomes an academic exercise: math, English, science, language, arts, religion class. And they just tick it off a list. Okay, like confirmation, right? It's Catholic graduation. I got, I got my driver's license, went to the prom, I got confirmed. They just tick it off a list, and then they leave your house. These atheists at these universities that teach our kids what to think, not how to think.
Correct.
Fill their minds with garbage. They come home to your house after the first semester at college and say, I don't believe in God anymore. I don't believe Jesus is real. And
what you just said is so huge too. I can't believe I didn't think of this earlier. When you said that about the universities that they're getting sent to are teaching them what to think, not how to think.
True.
A tenet of mine as I work through ideas with our kids is specifically the opposite. Because for me, when I was converting and I was coming back into the church, there was a guy who actually was the campus minister for the university parish, for the university I was attending. which is actually the parish we're recording this in. His name is Andrew Reinhart. He was an incredible guy, and he mentored me in such a profound way. Like, he would meet with me every week. He would read books with me. I remember the first book he had me read on my journey coming back into the church was a book on Platonics. And I was like, what the heck is this about? Why are we reading some ancient philosopher that is not even Catholic to get me started on my road into the church? And he was brilliant. Andrew was brilliant because he knew that based on my reasons for leaving faith that were so intellectual and so like he knew exactly what he was doing, and teaching me how to think instead of what to think, even in the context of faith. And that goes back to the way in which we taught our kids to pray, like how we process, how we understand, theological questions is more like it's more important to learn how to think theologically than to memorize a bunch of theological points. Because if you're basing it on memorization, then if someone asks you a question that's outside of the bounds of what you memorized, you're screwed. But if you know how to think about theology and how to process it, you can do a very good job of responding to a question that you hadn't memorized the answer to yet. And so, with my kids, I'm working with them to teach them how to think, how to process through things. And they are super annoying because of it. They are constantly asking me, why this? Why this? Why this?
That's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's weird thinking about that because I had 3 children. And the first 2 had Montessori, which Montessori is all about letting the child develop, you know what I mean, and seek the things that interest them and how to analyze and how to think and how to do stuff. And those 2 are my most critical thinkers as far as more probably moderately accepting of things, even if they don't agree with the church on some things, they still are going to look and research and dig for it on their own. And then my youngest one, she had no Montessori. She had like a Lutheran preschool, and then she went directly into Catholic school. And she didn't have that, Maria Montessori, of course, she was Catholic. She was from Italy, but she really believed in developing the whole child so that the child would develop their strengths. And my son, who is the most critical thinker of all of my children and he can be a real pain sometimes because he's so passionate about if he believes something, he believes something, you know what I mean? And he's researched it. He's not just blowing smoke up you. And it's crazy because he had literally 5 years of Montessori. He went all the way through 2nd grade. And then he went to parochial school. Now, it was a challenge when he got to parochial school because they would try to teach him about creationism and all that other stuff. Oh. And he was like, well, don't they know about the sperm and the egg? Oh my gosh. Because he was a Montessori kid. So he was a very free thinker. And of course they had to kind of rein that in. I got called. Yeah. They were like, you need to come into the school, Mrs. LeBlanc. I was like, okay, I'll be right in.
That's hysterical.
Wow. Yeah. It was funny. So, because, and it wasn't that they wanted to squelch him. That wasn't it at all. They needed to understand how he'd been educated. Because he was educated to analyze and tear things apart and to develop his strengths, whatever his thing was. And he was an artist too. And they had only had kids that were like probably at home and had daycare and whatever. And like Kenneth knew all his continents. He knew all his continents and all his states and all his capitals. And he was like 2.5.
Wow.
Like he could sing them all, because that's what Montessori is the bomb. I mean, I highly recommend it.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. What are some practical things? Because there may be some younger parents right now who are watching, or maybe just married or about to be married, and they're thinking about this whole kid thing, and and right now they're pulling from their experience that they have from their own families growing up.
Right.
But now they have to try to build something together. What are some practical things that they can do in their own families to lay the foundation that we're talking about before? What are some things that you recommend that they do together as a family?
I think for me growing up, the most important thing that we did as a family that I think to this day, I would say it was probably the most enriching thing for developing what, Pope John Paul said, the domestic family, is we had dinner together. We actually engaged each other in conversation almost nightly, even if we had sports, even if whatever, no matter what it looked like, if it was 8 o'clock at night and that's when we could all sit down at a dinner table together, that's when we sat down. I didn't do it as much with my family, although we used to try and do Sunday dinners, and my kids will even still talk about the Sunday dinners because it was something that meant a great deal to them, and they wish that we'd done it more.
Yeah.
And that's what they'll tell me.
Yeah.
So, and I, speaking from experience, will tell you that of all the things that I did, and we traveled, we had vacations, I had a really wonderful childhood, but the most significant, important part of my family upbringing and probably building a Christian thing based on that community and gathering together was eating a meal together. And having it be just not a meal where you're sitting there and you're just scarfing it down, but where you're actually sitting there and you're talking about, how was your day? What did you do today? Did you learn anything new today? And then we would talk politics, we'd talk religion, we would talk the news. You know what I mean? Literally, there was nothing off the table. And it was always, each dinner, the shortest dinner was like a half an hour, but most dinners were an hour to an hour and a half, even during the middle of the week, because it was important to communicate, because that's what Jesus wants. It's all about community, right? We're supposed to come to community. Well, your community, as you're raising and thinking about raising a family, is your family. There'll be friends and other people on the exterior,
but
you've got to build your own community. Yeah.
I think for me, having fun as a family. We used to have family nights, right? One night a week for an hour, we do something together as a family. It didn't involve television or watching a movie. So,
Nice.
We go outside in the yard and play like during the summertime or during the winter. We do it like the Wii, like Just Dance or something like that,
fun.
or some crazy thing, and or play board games or something like that. And those are always wonderful memories. In fact, when during the pandemic, when everybody was home, the kids were home from college and everything, we had family nights. Again, playing board
fun.
games, having fun. It was great.
Wow.
Kind of relive those wonderful memories. And because what you're trying to do, you're trying to build memories in your kids' hearts and their lives that they're going to bring it to their own families one day.
Yep.
So I think it's important to have fun and just enjoy each other as a family.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think for us, some families will relate to this. We've really, as a result of the pandemic, we faced some real financial hardships, and it put me as the leader of our home and the provider for our home into this really interesting place of I'm constantly having to hustle. I got to take on another client. I got to do this project for this other client,
Yeah.
and all of that while being the president of Awaken Catholic, and all of that while being a father and a husband. And it's been very heavy, and something that has been hugely helpful to us has been Alina, my wife, not getting off my butt about it's 5 o'clock, you're done.
Wow.
It's 5 o'clock, you're done. It's 5 o'clock, you're mine now. It's 5 o'clock, we're going to have dinner. Get over here. And it's tough because I'm over here thinking, but to keep having dinner, we got to make money.
Exactly.
And so,
been there.
And so as in that role, you don't stop being the provider just because it's 5 o'clock, but you got to turn off the work, and you got to be present to the family. And so making that choice and being a team in that, because gosh, not because I don't want to spend time with my family, but I just get so caught up in my role and making sure that I am taking care of my family and stuff. I get so caught up in it that I lose track of time. I literally, when it's 5 o'clock, it's I thought it was 2 o'clock. How did this happen?
Yeah.
And so being a team, and Alina knows where my heart's at and knows why that happens. And so she doesn't hold it against me, but she works with me on it. She's like, hey, here's your reminder, and
That's great.
It is great. And we kind of refer to it lovingly as that she's my Pepper Potts and I'm Tony Stark, the Iron Man. So Pepper Potts is his assistant, and they end up falling in love and stuff. But
That's
the point
cool.
is that she'll boss me around as soon as it's 5 o'clock. It's you're done. And if it's the weekend, it's the weekend,
Yeah.
And so
That's
making that time,
crazy.
stopping the work, being present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Well, it's very important, And one thing I do remember that I did do with my kids, all three of them, is I coached them. I coached my son, it was baseball. My daughter's was soccer. I coached their soccer teams. I made the time. I shifted schedules, and I coached at the high school I was the coach for the JV team, and I coached there for 2 years while they were there. I coached my son for like 6 or 7 years in baseball. And then I coached a premier soccer team with a couple of other
nice.
coaches. So like I did a lot, that was pretty much where you know what I mean? I hate to say that like soccer was my God, but growing up, soccer was my God. I mean, I lived for it. So, and I played baseball too. I did play softball, but I played baseball too. So I loved coaching baseball. I was a batting coach. But then I took a team. So, but I think that time, because your kids see, there's a lot to be taught in sports if you do it right. Like good sportsmanship and making time, you know what I mean, for other people and everything else. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it for the right reasons, it can be very, very productive and helpful and show your kids, that one, you took the time out of everything else you were doing to make time to go and coach and travel on buses and go out of town and do all the things that you had to do, which we did for years. I did for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So, and that was a good way. It was a good way too, because it's service,
Yeah, exactly. And I think the witness and example of parents is very important. For example, one thing we did, we go to St. Andre Bessette Parish in Burnside section of Portland. That's where a lot of the homeless central is. Well, but all of Portland's homeless now. But but before the pandemic, that was kind of the Skid Row area, and we go serve meals there.
Nice.
Or bring from our little inner city parish to bring food boxes at Thanksgiving time to families that were shut in, or and they weren't Catholic, just neighborhood families,
Right.
Or serving in our St. Vincent de Paul in our parish. They'd come every Tuesday and Thursday for food, and we'd be there with the kids to show them that this is, it's not just lip service. We actually have to do stuff, and we actually have to help people to go outside of ourselves. I'm so proud to see the hearts of my kids now, that still have that heart for service and still have that love for the poor, and
Nice.
it's beautiful to see that. And it's not just because Daddy said, because my wife and I led by example. That when Jesus says, feed the hungry, drink to the thirsty, it's not just nice words. He actually expects us to do it.
All right. Yeah, for sure. We should all try and volunteer and help others. Just sets a good example. So there's family life and what it looks like in our families. And we hope that you guys, find a lot of peace and joy within your families, by making time, and putting Jesus at the center of it. So, and if you like what you hear, please try and download the Awaken app and do that for us. You can go to your Apple Play Store, your Google Play Store, tablet, computer, anything, and get it. It's got all kinds
Lawnmower.
we need a lawnmower now. It's got all kinds of great stuff on it. There's, prayer groups and podcasts and music, and it's just really good. There's a great messaging app too. And that one was still working when all the other ones weren't working, so that's a benefit too. It's also not like spammy, and it doesn't track you like a lot of the other messaging apps do. So you may want to check out the messaging app on the Awaken Catholic app. So, and then Deacon's going to tell you how you can support us, because we can't do this without your support. Thank you.
Just go to theprodigallife.com. There you will see different levels of monthly giving, and which you can be a patron, and we align that with the different levels of angels. So be that good angel, that good guardian angel, right? And help to support the Prodigal Life.
Thank you. God bless.